Okay, admit all, admit everyone.
Hi everyone. We're just making sure that everybody's able to join, and we'll get started in 1 minute. I think we're going to get started, and others can just join once we're up and going. So, hi everyone, and welcome to the last installment of the GPI's webinar series for 2023. I'm Genevieve Halptrani, and I'm the Community of Practice Lead for GPI, and I have the honor of chairing this session today. Before we get started, I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping rules or housekeeping points. And just to note that the session will be recorded and it will be made publicly available should you wish to get that. You could usually find it on our website. The link to this is hosted on the webinar series page. And then to avoid any disruptions, could we please ask that everyone's cameras and microphones be switched off during the session. We will hopefully allow for time at the end of the session for Q&A. But in the meantime, there is a Q&A box that you'll find either at the top or the bottom of your screen, and you can just pop your questions into that. But also, if you can't find it, please feel free to just pop it into the chat, and we'll just monitor that as well until after the session, and we'll get the speakers to respond to that. Yeah, so those are the housekeeping rules. And now just to briefly introduce our speakers, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Natalie Davidson and Anna Boy. Natalie Davidson is a researcher and project manager at UCT. Her particular focus is around violence prevention in the home. And then Anna Boy is a technical program specialist at Clowns Without Borders South Africa, and her background is in international development and humanitarian assistance. I'll now hand over to Natalie and Anna to share their research on the adaptation of a parenting program with a particular focus on reducing violence against children and violence against women. Natalie, over to you. I think you're going first, right?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, everyone, for coming. While I quickly wait for my slides, there we go. Perfect. Basically today, as you've seen in the thing, we're going to be talking about how we can use parenting programs to address both violence against women and violence against children in the home. So first I just want to say this was a very collaborative, amazing project between us at UCT, led by Professor Kathy Ward, Plan International, SVRI, our amazing funders, and of course, Clowns Without Borders. So the idea behind this project was really to see how and if we could, and if it would be successful, an adaptation of the Parenting for Lifelong Health teen program to make it more explicitly address violence against women, given its already established success in preventing violence against children. So, firstly, let's just have a little discussion about violence and what research tells us. So violence against women and violence against children have been found to overlap in several significant ways. Firstly, they co-occur in the household very often, with some researchers suggesting that this is more of the reality than the reverse. Along with co-occurrence, we have very significant shared risk factors. And with that, linked to that, is common social gendered norms that underlie both forms of violence. Along with that, we have very shared, common, and compounding consequences for the violence. Significantly for our work also, there's a significant overlap in these forms of violence when it comes to adolescence. And lastly, it's really important for us to consider the intergenerational cycle of violence that really connects both these forms of violence. So as the presentation, webinar a few weeks ago suggested, there is a great potential for parenting programs to be able to prevent both forms of violence. And so that is what our project aimed to do. So just a bit about parenting programs. I won't go into too much detail, but there is really significant evidence that parenting programs and intervening in parenting style can have a significant impact, not only on violence prevention in terms of violence against children, but on a host of other important risk factors, and really amazing outcomes for parent and child in terms of mental health, and especially for children around juvenile delinquency, school failure, and general health. So there really is, as UNICEF argues, is really a need for positive parenting programs or interventions that are relevant and effective at reducing violence against children. But also there's a need to target and empower adolescents to ensure that change within the family occurs from both sides, so from parent and child. And then a bit about parenting for lifelong health. Yes, I could talk for days about it. It's an amazing suite of programs that has really started in South Africa, but has gone all around the world in its various forms. So our project focused on the program for parents and their teenagers between the ages of 10 to 17. But the PLH suite of programs has many other ones for young children, toddlers, and there's some really great emerging work in terms of digital versions. So it really, really is ripe for and a great tool to see if we can prevent both forms of violence. And then in just trying to see how we could do this adaptation, what would be needed to be changed, to be adapted, to be strengthened in the current program. In a formative research, talking to past participants of the program in Zimbabwe and participants from the same community who had not been part of the program, as well as facilitators, we explored how and we could do this adaptation, but also what would be most relevant to people. So what came out was these points. Firstly, there is significant need to shift gender norms. As I mentioned before, gender social norms underlie both forms of violence. But what we learned from participants in the study was that there is also a wish to redefine and explore the jobs and responsibilities that were originally seen as for the other gender. So women looking to become more involved in the economic opportunities in the home, and fathers looking to take on more of a role in parenting. Along with that, we saw the really big need to engage fathers more actively. So that was really a big part of the adaptation and recommendation for this adaptation. Along with that, there was really an emphasis from participants about the importance of the community, a real concern for the well-being of the community, and an emphasis on a communal approach to parenting. So that was another aspect that we needed to incorporate. In terms of the content, it became clear that we needed to strengthen the great relationship building skills already in the program, but expand them also to include the couple's everyday interactions and relationship. And lastly, there was a need to strengthen the economic support aspects of the program, given the very serious economic struggles of the participants and their clear linkages to conflict and tension in the home. So going on from that, I wanted to have Anna Boy, fantastic Anna Boy, who led the adaptation of this program, to come in and just talk a bit about how this adaptation was done, and what kind of things we took into consideration. Thanks so much, Anna.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I'm just checking if everyone can hear me well. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
thank you. All right. Yes, there we go. Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you very much for having me in this space as well. I'm excited to present what we've been doing with the adaptation of this, this manual. Thankfully, we didn't have to start from scratch. We really got to build on what already exists out there when it comes to interventions that support equitable gender norms, gender transformative parenting, all the things that we know are so important to prevent violence against women as well as children. So we got to learn from successful interventions like the Bandabero program that was piloted in Rwanda, several programs from Sanka Gender Justice, including the Working with Men and Boys program, the Men Care program, and the One Man Can program, and also the SASA awareness module from Raising Voices, a really beautiful resource to support equitable gender norms as well. And then we have, apart from those other successful interventions, also the research and implementation experiences from the various partners within the Global Parenting Initiative, Parenting for Lifelong Health, and the network that we are part of as Clowns Without Borders. So we have the Parenting for Respectability program in Uganda that has done a lot of work on male engagement. Institute for Security Studies in South Africa has been working on a GBV IPV prevention adaptation of the PLH for Young Children program, delivered in the workspace, a very interesting initiative. And then we have gender responsive parenting as included in Parent Text. Moa Schaefer has been leading that work from the University of Oxford. And then at Clowns, we've worked with facilitator couples, men and women together, delivering the PLH Teens program in India, as well as a range of partners in Zimbabwe that have been delivering the PLH Teens program. So we also got to draw from our experience in the local context for this adaptation. Then how did we go about the selection and the redesign of the actual program? So based on all the findings that Natalie shared from the formative research, we came to a point where we identified it's important to have 2 co-parenting partners and their teenager attend the group sessions. In the normal PLH Teens program, it's normally one caregiver with their teen, but now to strengthen the dynamics between the co-parenting partners, we included both the fathers and mothers, or both the caregivers of the teen. And then to facilitate that we can have separate group activities for fathers, mothers, and teenagers, we had 3 facilitators deliver the program together for each group. And we ended up with a program of 11 sessions to also allow for space for the new gender transformative activities. And then, of course, when handling topics related to intimate partner violence and domestic violence, it's important that there's also training that comes with that. So in addition to a normal parenting skills training that we provide, we also build on the local expertise of Plan, who has been doing this kind of work in Zimbabwe for a long time. So they've also been able to support their team on these specific topics in the local context. We're very grateful for that. In terms of content adaptation, we did 2 main things. First, we tried to weave the content on co-parenting and IPV prevention through the program by integrating it in the activities that were already there. Like Natalie was saying, a lot of the communication skills, conflict management skills that are already in the program could be expanded to really speak into this topic. And then we also integrated new activities, building on the existing programs that are already out there, integrating them and changing the format slightly, so it aligns with the collaborative social learning approaches that are used in the PLH programs. So what we ended up with is this beautiful monster. 11 sessions with the parents and the teams, closed off by a celebration session at the end. You'll see that the topics that have been included are very similar to the PLH Teens program that you might already well know. Starting with establishing positive parent-teen relationships, and then moving on in the later sessions to the content on positive discipline and managing conflict, so that the families are strengthened from the bottom up. And then, like I said, what we did is two things. One is the weaving of the content through the program as we already knew it, and second, to develop new activities. So I would just like to share a few examples of what that looks like so you can get a better understanding. So for some of the activities, we integrated the additional caregiver that will be attending the group session into the activity. So for example, the compliment circle is normally a parent and a teen sharing positive feedback towards each other, and now the co-parent has been added to that process. It works really beautifully in practice. Natalie is going to share some feedback from the participants shortly, so you'll get a sense of that. Then we reworked the role plays and the reflection questions that are part of the PLH programs. So in these role plays, we present parent-teen interactions, and then we reflect on those to draw out core building blocks for parenting skills. Now, in this program, we integrated some role plays in which it's actually the two co-parenting partners that act out a scenario. And also we included more reflection questions around gender dynamics and similar topics to draw out the key learnings that we would love to meet the outcomes of the program. And then in terms of the new activities, just two short examples. First, we included an activity that helps participants reflect on the gender dynamics in their own upbringing. So for the caregivers, we included an activity to reflect on the positive and the negative experiences they've had in their own childhood, based on two activities from the Badabero and Men Care program that you see below. And then on the right, you see the final output of that, where we have a set of questions for the men, for the women, to discuss their experience in their own childhood. And then they reflect first in pairs and then in a wider group on what those experiences have been, to really ensure it starts from a safer small space, and from there the sharing with a wider group is facilitated. And for the teenagers, we purposely chose not to have them reflect on the positive and negative impacts of their parents, because a reflection on the negative impact of their parents while their parents are present in the session might actually cause more conflict than be helpful to the family processes. So they only reflect on the positive impact of their parents, and then also they reflect on what they expect from their future relationships. And that is drawn from one of the activities in the Working with Men and Boys program. So there again, that's a helpful way to identify gender norms and start that discussion of what the expectations of men and women are, how they're formed, and what different choices they can make themselves. And then a second example is the social expectations and gender norms activity that we added. So across all of the different beautiful, successful interventions that we looked into before starting this adaptation process, in all of those programs, there's going to be a component on social expectations, because it's, of course, so foundational to a lot of the IPV problems that you see around. So it was easy to identify that was something that needed to be integrated in the program. And then what we ended up doing is we looked at all those social expectation activities across the programs, and then we selected a smaller subset of statements to draw out the key building blocks on power imbalance and gender equality. And we really ensured that the discussion would be very practical and without theoretical language, because of course, talking about power imbalance might not be something that a family in rural Zimbabwe could relate to. So we really tried to keep the wording very simple and straightforward to make sure that everyone could engage in the discussion and could join along in this process of thinking about what gender norms might be there in their families and communities. So once we did all these bits of adaptation, we ended up with a facilitator manual. Oh, sorry, facilitator manual, and that we shared again with Plan. So together with Plan, we then did the contextualization. They went through the entire program as it was adapted, provided more input on what would work in the Zimbabwe context, adding locally relevant concepts and names to really make sure that the participants could relate to the content well and could easily identify that this content is not something that is brought in externally to change how children are raised, but really something that is developed from the local contexts and realities that could apply in their specific families as well. And then once we did the contextualization, the adapted content was again shared with the participant advisory board. So big thank you for Natalie and to Professor Kathy Ward for doing all the hard work on the ground, meeting with the people and getting the feedback. The manual was already very well received and people were very enthusiastic to get going with this program. And then we also did internal training within Clowns Without Borders, because of course we know parenting, but the gender transformative and co-parenting content was still quite new to our team. So we did internal training around those topics, and then we adjusted the training curriculum based on the adapted program to get to the actual training and implementation stage. And then I would love to hand back to Natalie to take us through what we actually ended up doing in the field and the beautiful outcomes that came from that.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was so great. So nice to hear it all after being involved in it. So just before I move on to the exciting results, I just wanted to talk a bit about the implementation itself. So once we had done this whole amazing process that Anna has described, we worked on implementing this in rural Zimbabwe. So one of the first things we needed to do was to recruit facilitators. What we did was that we identified local community representatives who were seen as good candidates to facilitate. So for us, it was very important that the local community felt like they had ownership and felt like the program was relevant and helpful for them. So we really worked with the local community when it came to recruitment. So in a big community meeting with Plan staff, with representatives from different ministries, as well as great village heads, ward facilitators, and members of the community to discuss who would be great candidates to nominate and how the program could be implemented within this one specific ward that was chosen. So, and it was through that process that they decided that the program would be split into four, the ward would be split into 4 clusters, Sitolo, Motanga, Matanda, and Kiriwi. So in this way, we had facilitators that then came from each of these clusters, so that because for the community it was very important that the program was spread so as many people as possible from the different parts of the ward could get a chance to experience it. And then I really want to emphasize the importance then of the training and coaching. That is really a crucial advantage of the PLH suite of programs and really crucial for this adaptation. So, and that's done really expertly by the Clowns Without Borders team, and they're amazing trainers who are from and work in Zimbabwe. and they teach not just how what the content of the program is, but really how to deliver that content and create a really supportive, comfortable environment for the participants. It really is an amazing experience to go through. So a bit about the study now, so our evaluation of the adapted program. So as I've said, it was in Ward 18 of the Mutare district. So it's about an hour outside of Mutare, the city, a very rural community. We worked with 50 families. So as Anna said, the adapted program works with one male caregiver, one female caregiver, and one teen of the program, in the program. So that's 150 people if we have 50 families. So we worked with a mixed methods approach. As Anna's mentioned, we started with focus groups with the participant advisory boards to, again, make sure that the program was relevant and really, given the struggles with engaging men in parenting programs and programs more generally, making sure that men would want to come and would be interested in the content of the program. Yeah, and as Anna said, we had some really great feedback and really excitement to start. And then we did quantitative surveys pre and post, and then we did a big facilitator focus group and individual interviews with some of the participants. That looks so weird. So for those, let's just have a little discussion firstly before we get into the results about who participated in the program. So firstly, I just picked out some ones that I think are important in terms of the implementation going forward of this program. Firstly, we had caregiver relationships with teens. So because you can see the majority of relationships were that of biological parents. But encouragingly, we see some grandparents, some great-grandparents, and some other forms of relatives. So this was really encouraging that we're not just welcoming to biological parents, nuclear families, but to grandparents and great-grandparents and other forms of family dynamics. Along with that, you see that the majority of fathers or male caregivers lived in the household with their teen, with the next one being living elsewhere. So this, I think, is an important thing to take into consideration with this evaluation and this implementation of the program, is that it's obviously a bit easier to engage fathers if they're living with their teenagers. But we did see some fathers who are not living with their teens. Lastly, we see a huge majority of unemployed parents, and a slightly bigger group of girls compared to boys for the teenagers. So these were all just really interesting to take into consideration and to think about when we are implementing this kind of program. So excitingly, when we looked at quantitative outcomes, our focus mainly was on intimate partner violence, as we were hoping to see that change. So we saw a significant decrease in physical intimate partner violence as reported by the women caregivers. So overall, we see that the rates were relatively low, but not very low, but relatively low. So it was actually really amazing to have seen a reduction at all. But obviously, it does point to the need to test the program within the context of higher IPV rates. What we did see, though, is that we did see a decrease in emotional intimate partner violence, but not a significant one. This may be the result of a small sample size, but it is important to note that we had quite high rates of emotional intimate partner violence as compared to physical violence. And I think it's important to highlight here that emotional IPV is quite difficult to measure, but it certainly requires some more in-depth exploration. And then in terms of our two big adaptations of the program, we really tried to focus on encouraging co-parenting and to see more equitable gender attitudes as a way to see the path towards preventing or reducing the risk of violence. So we see that we got a significant decrease in co-parenting struggles, and we saw a significant increase in more equitable gender attitudes. So it's really exciting to see that not only are we having a result with a significant outcome with our main outcome, but we're also seeing it with those key aspects that we were looking to change. What else? So then we come to the question of, did we maintain the original purpose of the program? So excitingly, the original purpose, the original focus, I should say, of the program was maintained. So we saw a significant increase in positive parenting. We saw a significant decrease in abusive parenting, i.e. violence against children. We saw a really significant decrease in parenting stress. This was the most impressive decrease or outcome. Oh. And then lastly, another aim of the project is to look at child behavior problems reported by both teens and parents. So, and in both cases, we saw a significant decrease in child behavior problems. So these are the quantitative outcomes, and they really, really encouraging and really hopeful and suggest this program is really promising. But what did the participants have to say? What was their reaction to the program? So firstly, the participants were overwhelmingly positive about the program. And it's something I've seen in many different evaluations of PLH programs. Participants are really, really positive about PLH, and they were equally positive about this adaptation. And as you can see from the quote, they say, all sessions are very important in our daily lives. I loved all the sessions the same, and no session is better than the other because all sessions work together hand in hand. So it's really exciting that we're seeing not only that they're really excited about the program and all the sessions, but that they really understand and see the fact that the program works session by session to encourage those long-lasting behavior changes and everyday interactions. Along with that, and supporting the quantitative findings, participants really emphasized an improved relationship between both parents and their children, and an improved co-parenting partners relationship. So at both the relationships we were looking to target, we're seeing positive results. But well, on top of that, we have participants really highlighting that this program improved relationships beyond these two target relationships, talking about teens talking about improved relationships with friends, with other teens in the community and at school, and really an increase in bullying, which is quite encouraging. But at the same time, parents also saying that this has really improved their relationship with their other relatives, but also with the general community. Again, suggesting that they're using these skills and these and their knowledge with relationships beyond our two target relationships. Sorry. And then linking to that, participants really highlighted that families are now doing things together as a family, which they had not been doing before the program. They really emphasized a new sharing of skills, of responsibilities. They highlighted really that they were now seeing less conflict and tension in home after the program. And they also really highlighted that children's behavior had significantly improved, again, supporting what we found quantitatively. And then talking a bit about changes in attitudes towards gender norms. So here we have both participants speaking directly and more subtly about these kind of changes. So as you can see from these two quotes, there's really a focus on sharing and doing jobs, doing things, tasks that were not seen as for them as their particular gender. So as one says, we do some jobs which are not meant for us as fathers. The teen saying, I learned that no duty is meant for boys or girls only, but both of us, we can do all the duties. So really exciting that we're seeing that coming from both the male caregiver, and we're seeing that from the teens. Along with that, there was also a discussion around fathers feeling more comfortable talking to their girl teenagers about the issues that they face and feeling like they could take up a bigger role in advising and forming a stronger relationship with their children, but especially with their girl children, teenagers. On that, I want to emphasize that this wasn't a straightforward, easy task, and that while participants at the end of the program, as you've seen, were really positive, when we talk to facilitators, they give us a bit of a more nuanced picture. So despite the facilitators really highlighted that despite some initial resistance from male caregivers remained active as participants. So facilitators said for the first few sessions, male caregivers were a bit hesitant, a bit suspicious, but they still remained active participants and kept coming. I mean, our attendance rate was amazingly high, with our lowest session rate being 92%. So they kept on coming, even though they were a bit resistant, a bit suspicious. Facilitators really emphasized that role plays and the Synovial buddy system were important in keeping men engaged. The Synovial buddy system is where participants in the program are linked together and asked to support each other and encourage each other to attend the program. Another point that maybe is not thought of as often, but I think is equally as important, is the issue of teen engagement. Facilitators highlighted that facilitators highlighted that teens felt scared to share their ideas with their parents in the room, and that the cultural norm around the role teens should take in the home as not being overly involved in the serious, sensitive discussions that go on in the home kind of got in the way of teens feeling like they could fully participate. But again, when in speaking about the teen engagement, facilitators said that after a few sessions, they saw teens really coming out of their shells, sharing more and being more and more confident. So, and they highlighted really that they loved the homework activities and particularly the role plays. And facilitators emphasized the importance of emphasizing that to participants that everyone's answer is correct and there's no wrong answers, and really encouraging teens to participate and answer questions. So really encouraging overall. So I just wanted to reflect a bit about the lessons learned from this implementation. Obviously, I think we can all tell, hopefully, that this is a really promising program. But I think there's some lessons to learn for those doing similar programs and looking to address both forms of violence. So for us, having community members as facilitators was important, but not only that they were community members, but also that they were really well trained by Clowns Without Borders. So having those two factors really created a comfortable, safe environment for participants to share and learn from one another. And then focusing on small achievable shifts in gender attitudes. So really showing participants that these subtle changes, subtle sharing of responsibilities, more equal division of labor in the home can have really amazing outcomes and results for them as parents and them as teenagers. Along with that, and linked to that, is that a key advantage of the PLH programs that we lent on was the sustainment of skills being built into the program's design. So not only are we telling people about these skills and knowledge, but we're also showing them and getting them to practice those skills within the intervention. And then another one I think is crucial is giving men, women, and children a space to discuss amongst themselves as a group, but then also having a chance for them to discuss as a larger, big group, and then also having a chance to discuss things as a family unit. So that was really having those different spaces. And I think it's something we learned and we took on board from the amazing work that's being done at Parenting for Respectability. And lastly, another reflection was that there's really a need to layer this program within existing services, especially income generating projects. In speaking to a lot of people and NGOs and on the ground in Zimbabwe, I think it's equally true for a lot of us in low and middle income countries, is that there is a need to really start shifting those economic situations and struggles that everyday families live with. And interestingly, they've also really highlighted that income generating projects can be really helpful and crucial to male engagement. So again, something to think about and consider going forward. So in sum, I'm really excited about this promising project, and I think it's really, really encouraging that there's proof that we can prevent both forms of violence at the same time in one program. Clearly, more work need to be done, and we hope that people will do it. I just want to quickly have a little shout out to Moa Schaefer's work, which is a promising digital intervention of what we've done. So Parent App is one of the digital forms of PLH, and she is working to adapt and pilot this adaptation in many countries, doing a very similar thing to what we did. So yeah, really look out for those results, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thanks so much to Natalie and Anna for your wonderful presentation. You've got a lot of amazing comments in the chat, and you can have a look at that. In the meantime, we're going to open up for Q&A. I think I've only noted 2 questions so far, but I'm sure more will come in as we get going. So the first question was from Dr. Sobia, and it was, the findings are amazing, highlighting the importance of these interventions. I was just wondering if any follow-up data was also collected, or the findings are only at the post-intervention data taken right after the intervention. Yes, you can have a look at the question as well, if I wasn't clear, Natalie, in the Q&A.
Yes, I see it. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yes, so unfortunately, this was just pre-post data. So the post data was taken right after the intervention. But yeah, hopefully we can look towards follow-ups in the future, knowing how important they are to really understanding the long-term changes that we've made.
Thanks, Natalie. And then I think this one was from Seema. Any recommendations or suggestions on what these income generation activities could be? That's a good question.
Thank you. Yeah, I will really first highlight that this is not a big area of expertise for me, but so I'll only speak to my knowledge on the ground in Zimbabwe, and this could be very different in different places. But when the discussion came up about income generating activities, it was really around skills development in terms of creating small businesses. A lot of the time, both in our formative data and in our follow-up, our post data now talking to the participants, there was really an emphasis that not so much that they wanted funds, right? But they really wanted skills to create small businesses. They wanted to have knowledge on things that could help them generate money. So I think it would depend on the specific context. And I think that in talking to different people on the ground, it sounds like there's really a need to make sure that we understand what kind of skills, what kind of things would be viable and helpful for them to create small business out of. So not just to give them a skill in something, but making sure that skill is going to be helpful in creating a small business that's viable and creates change. So those are some of the reflections that I have, but I think it's really an area in which there's really a lot more exploration that's needed. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm not seeing any other questions at the moment. Oh, here we go. Are these slides going to be available widely, including the program resources? That's the second time someone's asked about the slides.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself again. I'm happy to share the slides. Anna, if you're happy, I'm happy.
Yes, please.
I think we can share them together with the recording later next week, if that's okay.
And then when it comes, and then when it comes to the program itself, the manual, I think we're looking to make a few small tweaks and changes, perhaps, and then hopefully have it freely available, like the current PLH manuals. So look out for it.
And then another question, this was from Matilda. Can you share the evaluation itself, the pre and post?
Oh, yes, sure. Sorry, I realize now that I was maybe a bit sparse with the information around the pre and post, especially the quantitative stuff. So for sure, I'm happy. I've created a very long, very detailed report that I'm happy to share, but maybe isn't in the best format for people to read. So I am working on a simplified, nicer, more straightforward version. So I'm looking to share that, and as soon as I'm done with that, I'll share that widely with you. But also feel free to email me if you want something more urgent, and we can have a chat.
Thanks so much, Natalie. Anna, was there anything you'd like to add onto those questions that were posed?
No, that's all clear. Thanks.
Awesome. Just having a look. I think your presentation was well explained. There aren't many questions coming through at the moment, but I think you're right. People might just reach out to you directly, because it sounds like people are really interested in the adaptation and the resources. So the actual documents that you used. So that's really great. Yeah, let me just have a look. Oh, thanks, Jamie. Jamie's also just shared some resources as well. Awesome. Thanks so much, Natalie and Anna. If I could just go to the next slide. I'm not sure who is control of slides now. There we go. Thanks. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. But before we close off, this was the last session for the year. But definitely keep an eye out. I'm sure we will have a webinar early next year, so probably as early as February next year. But before we head off and in closing, I just wanted to highlight a key initiative, and this is the initiative, the Global Initiative to Support Parents, also known as GISP. I think there might be some of our colleagues on the call, and a lot of you are or might be familiar with GISP. This initiative is a collaboration between UNICEF, WHO, Parenting for Lifelong Health, the In Violence Partnership, as well as the Early Childhood Development Action Network, or ICDAN, as well as GPI. And GISP works with a number of stakeholders, including government, civil society partners, researchers, donors, to promote universal access to parenting or parents and caregiver support, so that every child can receive and receive the support they need across their life course. So I just thought I'd take the opportunity, and it's amazing that we actually finished a bit earlier today, just to highlight GISP, and to also say that for the people that have joined the call, please go have a look at some of the amazing work that GISP is doing with its partners, as well as the ongoing research and all other partners that are linked as well. There are a couple of events that's being hosted with GISP, and you can have a look at the website just to get some more information about that as well. Yes, so in closing, thank you so much again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you all here next year again and sharing in all the amazing research that's being done around supporting parents, but also against violence prevention. Take care, everyone. Oh, Natalie, I see your hand up. I don't know if that was a hand or...
Sorry, it was an accident.
Okay. Machi, your hand was up or to second down so quickly, but I'm seeing it. I think we're good. Yes, thank you so much. Please look out for any communication from GP as well. There's a few links that have been dropped in the chat. We look forward to seeing you all. Take care.